Secret places beneath the wet soil, seeds are softening. Once the earth warms in spring, the tenderness of the shell...
OMG, your studio is beautiful. What's up, bitch?
Oh, hello! Happy New Year!
Brought you a coffee.
Oh my god, that is so sweet. Oh wow, that is really good coffee. Do I detect a hint of the Milky Way?
You have such good taste. So, how goes the spectating?
I was just beginning a segment on the germination of several wisteria seeds. Very intense competition this year, but we can make time in our schedule for the cosmic barista, can't we, Abby?
Yes, sir.
We can make time.
Awesome.
Thank you, Abby. Abby.
Abby. Is that your assistant's name in this universe? That is tragic.
What universe is this anyway? 413, I watch this one from time to time, is very human-oriented. I think the Eldrich entity in charge is Mr. Grizzy Poo is on vacation and he needs you to host a podcast. A what? It's like storytelling around a campfire, only through the human machines. It's very communal, very trendy.
It will be nothing for a creature of your skills.
Well, thank you. I'll just talk about the germination of the wisteria. I can't think of anything more engaging than that. The seeds have been in perfectly moist soil, and they are bursting to grow. This will be an epic story.
Sir, management sent this. Oh wow, a change of assignment. Oh no.
The Curious Travels of Mr. Bridger Duke Hahn, aka Route 413.
Brought to you by Paperback Radio, written by L.J. Longo.
What was that?
Nothing. I'll just go. You enjoy your coffee. I have nothing for you, Abby. Assistants have to pick up their own coffee. Bye!
Are you ready to begin, sir?
Of course. Let's just take a look.
"238 Montpellier Ave, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Bridger Duke Hahn, stop being indecent!" An electric razor would not do much damage to a little old lady shrieking at 5 a.m. Maybe he should switch to straight razors. Bridger Hahn cringed at this, his first thought of matricide for the day, and ran as far from it as he could. "Good morning, Mom. How did you sleep?" "Shut up! Make me coffee." For a tiny old woman, his mother made a staggering amount of noise as she stomped past the bathroom and into the kitchen. Bridger finished the last few buzzes and wiped his tanned face clean. Bridger read, in what he assumed were fairy tales, about mothers who did nice things for their children, braided their hair and cut the crusts off sandwiches, mothers who kissed bruised knees and scratched elbows and praised their children for being kind, clever, and handsome, mothers who did not keep jars of baby teeth and vials of blood in their closets. When he was a student, teachers and school counselors trying to help him understand himself had given Bridger essay prompts about the immigrant experience, or books to read about fatherless boys. Whatever secret they craved, he suspected the topic of mothers would unlock it. As Bridger buttoned his postal blue uniform, he chastised himself for thinking unkind thoughts. What kind of adult man thought about hurting a little old lady with a straight razor? Or wished like a little boy that his own mother were, "You unfinished roll of shit! Why do you keep coffee so high on the shelf?" Kinder. 5 minutes, Mom. Bridger skipped the last buttons on his shirt by tucking the hem into his cargo pants. "You want me to use that footstool and fall off and die!" Bridger thought she was being a little dramatic when the sun hadn't even come up yet, but he knew his tone wouldn't be authentic enough if he tried to. "Can't even deny it!" she hissed. "Such a son wants me to die, just like your evil older sister." His evil older sister was also his very wealthy older sister. Lakeland Hahn did something involving numbers and suits in New York City. After her second heart attack, Mom lived with Lakeland, and they'd gotten along better than anyone expected, probably because Lakeland was always at work and had a guest bedroom bigger than Bridger's entire apartment. But one day Mom had gone too far. No one had explained to Bridger exactly what too far was, only that now Lakeland refused to talk to their mother until she received an apology, and Mom remained convinced Lakeland had tried to poison her. Bridger was certain their mother was exaggerating about the poisoning. Usually. Either way, the old woman now lived in the master bedroom of his apartment, and Bridger, even though he was an adult man in his early 30s and it was his name on the lease, was sleeping on the couch behind a privacy curtain. "If only Meadow weren't so stupid," Mom grieved. "She's the only one of you who loves me." Bridger left the bathroom in his rubber-soled, leather-adjacent, postal-approved sneakers in one hand and his black socks in the other. Meadow's not stupid, Mom. She loves you just as much as the rest of us. Meadow, who had dropped her family name because it oppressed her spirit, was the youngest and might have been the smartest of all of them. She lived in a huge house with 8 other people, an artist's commune, she called it. Mom couldn't tolerate even visiting Meadow, let alone... Something hideous squatted on the kitchen counter, about to pounce. Bridger's heart flinched with panic at the hunched shape, the floating white mane, the glaring eyes. He knew instinctively the beast had come to eat his heart. It would drain the life and joy from him, and no one who loved him would ever know what had happened. Then the monster moved, and the gray dawnlight revealed the floral print of her pajamas, the bulk coffee clutched in the frail claws. "Mom, do you need help getting down?" His mother awkwardly shifted in her squat, clutching the coffee and glaring at the footstool, which was too far to help her. Finally, she growled in Vietnamese, telling him yes, but also that he was a cursed dog and engaged in disgusting acts with human waste. Then she held out her arms to be lifted like a child. Bridger took the big coffee bin from her, lifted her carefully, surprised as he always was by the papery softness of his mother's skin and the absolute density of her body. Still, he lifted heavier packages than her every day. Mom pushed him away as soon as her feet were on the floor. "What did you do with—" Bridger lifted the little glass jar of ground coffee from behind the coffee maker where she kept it. "I'll make your coffee, Mom. Why don't you go relax on the—" The tiny woman ignored him, fuming her way to the porch with her pipe and blanket. She muttered curses, mostly not in English, and none acceptable from a mother. He ought to have left her on the counter. She'd stomp and fume, maybe throw herself off, maybe be stuck there until the end of the day. Part of him knew the bitter old crab deserved it, but the greater part of him was horrified he'd thought such a cruel thing. Because, despite what his mother would say, Bridger Hahn was actually very kind, clever, and handsome. For a human, if you're into that sort of thing. When he'd resumed his morning routine, Bridger's movements carried a beautiful rightness, as if some cosmic choreographer had planned how he would make his oatmeal and cut the apple, designing each step to be efficient, tidy, and good. But as soon as he opened the freezer to prepare his lunch for the day, the dance screeched and stopped. Where was his lunchbox? Where was his peanut butter and jelly sandwich, his bag of grapes, the frozen sweet tea? God damn it, Mom. Even his righteous fury is beautiful. He opened the refrigerator. She'd carelessly flung the bag of grapes back into the crisper next to the half a pound still on the vine. The water bottle was filled with clear water, and the sandwich was gone. The lunchbox stretched unhappily full, mostly occupied by a warped plastic bento. The bento itself was stuffed with bun cha and lazily made rice balls. No room for the water bottle, the grapes, or even most of the bento. When did she even have the time? Bridger pulled out the lunchbox and peeked deeper into the fridge, looking for his sandwich. Mom rapped on the window and waved her pipe impatiently. So he brought her the coffee, apples, bowl of oatmeal, and 2 of her hard-boiled eggs, and set the tray on the porch table. "No, inside." The smoke of her pipe made a haze around her white hair and looked eerie against the pink line of dawn. "And don't throw it around. It's not a package from Amazon." "Where is my lunch, Mother?" She waved her frail hand through the smoke. "Take the banchan rice. It's good for you. A man's meal." "I don't like cold meatballs for lunch. When I make a peanut butter and jelly, meat is good for you. You're very lucky you can afford meat. This is a wonderful country I brought you to." Even in the low chair she managed to look down at him. Even beside the pile of the neighbor's junk, even in the dirty streets of Ventnor, New Jersey, and the crowded Brick, she expected him to bow and say thank you. "Didn't you tell Lakeland just the other day she was forcing you to stay in this cold hellhole of a country?" "Don't talk to me about that ungrateful girl." Mom looked at the dirty bay and the cloudy sky, done with the conversation, and to show it, she picked up the sandwich in her lap and took a huge bite. "Now listen. Just because Bridger Hahn was imagining picking up this little old lady and dropping her down the rusty metal stairs does not make him a bad person. Many adults have similar homicidal impulses toward their elderly relatives. There ought to be a nice, neat word for it. Something like invasive pre-matricidal thoughts, or permissible parricide. Why are you just standing there? Get your lunch, go to work. Maybe if he replaced her heart pills with a placebo, or rat poison. Okay, see you tonight, Ma. Bridger tapped the keys in his pocket and moved toward the stairs. No! The woman jumped and stood in his way. Bridger flinched, terrified now he'd accidentally knock his frail old mother down those stairs. You will bring the lunch I made you. I will go to Wawa. Bridger moved a little forward, trying to bluff her. She didn't budge. You will bring the bento I made for you." The flash of her anger still cowed Bridger, even though he towered over her and bore a close resemblance to a genetically perfected child of a Yakuza boss and a surfer boy. The tiny old woman held power over him. Even in Vietnam, his mother had always seemed strange and foreign to him, different from other people, full of mysterious wisdom that was not to be questioned. She whined, "It hurts my heart when you don't eat my food." Of course, she was also a mother who was very good at manipulating her children. So, Bridger squished the lid of his mother's banchan rice balls. He took the vine of grapes since she wanted the bag so badly. Then, just for spite, and since he couldn't have cold sweet tea and had to drink lukewarm water, he also took the last of her 3 hard-boiled eggs. She smiled with the smugness of a despot as he left the house again with his swollen lunchbox. "Give me a kiss before you go." That was not like her, and he suspected a trap. But he couldn't find the bitterness in his heart to deny her. Her hands were cold on his face, with the softness of the soon-to-be-dead. "Stay warm, Mama. Call Sissy if you need anything." Mom looked like she was about to spit. "Your sisters are useless." Bridger rolled his eyes at her dramatics. Then, when he was safe on the stairs, cheerfully said, "Thanks for making these hard-boiled eggs for me." "My eggs? My lucky eggs?" She leaped to her feet. "You horrible, horrible boy!" He chuckled and jauntily took the stairs at a speed she couldn't hope to match. Instead, she tried to shock him into submission and screamed at him in Vietnamese, "Give them back, you bitch! They're my eggs!" "I'll bring you tacos tonight, Ma. Love you." "You mean-hearted, stupid, lazy." There wasn't a Vietnamese word angry enough for her, so she screeched in English, "You mailmen are good-for-nothing, stinky!" "Hey!" He cut her off sharply at the bottom of the stairs, and it was his turn to look down on her. "You will not disrespect the United States Postal Service." It was her turn to roll her eyes at his dramatics, but she didn't say anything else. He straightened his cap. "And we prefer mail carriers these days." 800 Absecon Boulevard, Atlantic City, New Jersey. The city of Margate was too small to run a full-time post office. It had only 3 clerks, one of whom was a hideously pleasant girl. Margate didn't even have an LLV. "Excuse me, ma'am, that's jargon." LLV, of course, stands for Long Life Vehicle. Now, because Margate was so small, all their mail went out of Ventnor, which at least looks like a proper city, with bodegas, no parking, and a clear demarcation of wealth and poverty as you get farther from the beaches. But Sir, I think we need just a little more. Huh, really? A long life vehicle is an American light transport truck model, usually weighs in at about 2,700 pounds, 14.5 feet long. Ventnor, of course, was too small to run its mail and Margate, so Ventnor's mail ran out of Atlantic. Sir? Abby, you are so rude. What? An LLV is a post truck, a normal style post truck, the big white box on 4 wheels with mirrors sticking out like a bug's antenna, and the mail carrier sits on the right-hand side. Is that specific enough? For those of you who are in universes where this broadcast is not audio, I'm waiting for my lovely assistant to answer. This is not a chapter break. I think now the confusion I sense is from another source. I don't know what could possibly be confusing anyone in this audience. I'm a very good narrator. I'm very professional when I am not being interrupted. Besides, people used to look things up when they didn't know them. That's all I'm saying. Now, what was I saying? Margate, Ventnor, running the mail. Right. Margate was too small to run its mail. Ventnor was too small to handle its mail and Margate's, so Ventnor's mail ran out of Atlantic City. This, of course, meant that the Atlantic City Annex was a sprawling warehouse of organized confusion. The accountable's clerk sat behind an actual cage surrounded by key and gas cards and tall filing cabinets. 2 very neat oak desks with fancy computers and tidy filing cabinets made a little island of supervisor space surrounded by a moat of concrete. Several thousand packages, mostly from Amazon, filled row after row of bright orange hampers which stood like soldiers anticipating marching orders. Several dozen cases, each a cross between an IKEA shelf and a tiny house, bore slender shelves labeled with address markers, waiting to bear the weight of 1,000,000 letters stacked in plastic tubs. Everything else was dust and concrete. Even most of the carriers by this time were just dust and concrete. Bridger, striding across the floor with his tidy uniform and stoic face, was no exception. Inwardly, he danced with the same insecurity of every day. Who would have called out? What shitty route would he patch together today? Who would stick him with their cluster boxes or their Margate packages? Hahn, you're on, Take a piece of Margate. Krajewski, a gangly and uncomfortable mix between a beggar and a tyrant, studied his clipboard. His glasses glinted through the dust and stray strands of his man bun. And, the apartment cluster from Jones' route. Oh, and the postmaster wants to see you. You know that thing that cats do when they arch their back and hiss right before running away? Bridger did that on the inside. Outside, he nodded and turned toward the postmaster's office. Margot Formica, the busiest person in the post office, cared deeply about her staff. Probably. Mostly, she cared about being in charge and running things smoothly. She came from a long line of people who were in charge and ran things smoothly, even things they shouldn't have been running, like liquor, drugs, and horse races. The Formicas had retained enough of their organized brutality to completely corner the market on Italian bread in Atlantic City, but Margot had never been very good at customer service. She had the kind of passionate temper that occasionally screams in foreign languages, even though Margot only spoke one. Bridger pushed the buncha farther in his lunch bag, as if she would fly into a rage because those meatballs were not Italian. The dust itself refused to step off the concrete and into her office, which was the cleanest place in the entire annex. Bridger suspected the periwinkle carpet had once been a dark navy, but over the years it had soaked up the sweat and fear from every city mail carrier assistant coming into the postmaster's office, and had softened its color out of sympathy. The postmaster read from a clipboard, her perpetually bothered expression hardly shifting when she grunted. It might have been good morning. It might have been sit down. Bridger stood awkwardly close to the chair, just in case. You're about to make career? Yes, ma'am. I'll hit my 2-year by the end of the month. Making career, getting promoted from city carrier assistant to city carrier, didn't mean much to Bridger. Career meant he'd get sick days, vacation, and the option of turning down overtime, none of which he saw himself using. As a city carrier, he couldn't be paid less than 40 hours a week, which meant nothing since the postal service was so understaffed he'd been working an easy 50 hours a week since he started. A career carrier had a raise in pay, so that was something, but he didn't anticipate any grand changes to his life. He had no seniority, and everyone with their own route would still make him their bitch. Formica flipped through the paper on her clipboard. Congratulations, you're making career early. We have a new route that needs a regular. Bridger resisted his excited gasp. A new route? How was that even possible? A regular meant the same route every day. Regular meant a routine he could control. Regular meant Sundays off. It was everything he had ever wanted, and he'd never thought it would happen because of course it wasn't going to happen. Ma'am, what about Ted? Formica looked up at him for the first time. Ted? Teddy Barnstone. He has seniority.
Oh no.
I have strong feelings about Teddy Barnstone. Fuck Teddy Barnstone. He's a fucking moron, and I refuse to allow him to enter the story. He called out without notice when he was still in his first 90 days. Bridger wasn't late even once in 2 years, and Barnstone dresses sloppily. No respect for the postal uniform. One of those fellows who unbuttons it on hot days and walks around like the official uniform of the United States Postal Office is an aloha shirt. Theodore Barnstone III is not worthy. Besides, if Teddy Barnstone took this route, he'd be dead by the end of the day, just like his father and his grandfather before him. Formica looked back at her computer, then handed him a wide, flat key to an LLV. If I was gonna give the route to Barnstone, I would have. Bridger took the key, too startled to resist. Thank you, ma'am, for the... As soon as he took the key, her hand went to her phone, and without looking at him, she picked it up and started dialing. Bridger took a step toward the door, then realized he didn't know where to go. Excuse me, ma'am, what's the route number? You know, so I can find the case. Formica looked at him, and something was wrong. Her eyes were too open, too wide. Dark and sightless somehow. The case is in the back corner, near the cage. Case in the back corner? Bridger couldn't remember a case anywhere near the accountables cage. And the postmaster smiled, a joyless, empty smile that showed far too many teeth and made his blood turn tail and run. Route 413. The LLV that matched the keys was the oldest and ugliest vehicle in the entire fleet. In Bridger's opinion, I would never make that kind of remark about such a noble, majestic creature. The pollen on the windshield and the weeds around its tires gave the impression that the truck had been forgotten in the side parking lot for decades. The dings and peeled paint made it more silver than white, and the entire cockpit was coated with a thick layer of dust. Bridger, who felt sorry for dented cans in the supermarket, gazed at the truck sadly. In a few months, the whole thing would be junked and repurposed for parts. He grabbed the wheel and swung into the driver's seat. The chair wheezed as his weight settled in. When the engine rattled to life, the entire cabin coughed, and a cloud of dust stirred from the vents. Maybe it would be junked in a few weeks. Poor old bitch, you're older than me. Bridger caressed the wheel with a half-hearted tenderness. He ran through the rest of the official inspection, testing the lights and recording the mileage. He was supposed to ask for help to check if the brake lights were functioning, but he'd learned he could test it himself if he wedged an ice cracker on the brake. That's our Bridger, self-sufficient. When he tested everything on the checklist and a few things that weren't, Bridger crouched to look at the chassis, in case some scab had jostled loose during his rude examination. He felt another twinge of guilt for interrupting the ancient vehicle's long rest. But nothing dripped. She had new tires, the mirrors were clean, and the tank was full. There was nothing to report. The LLV was perfect. Well, Bridger patted the dash affectionately. I guess you're stuck working today. The LLV growled and sputtered before Bridger turned it off and put the key back on his belt. He found the case for Route 413 in a dark shadow beside the accountable's cage, right between the janitor's closet and the women's locker room. How had he never seen it before? He'd sorted the one just a few feet away, Route 12, over 100 times. 116 times to be exact. But the case for Route 413 was so distinct. Distinct was Bridger's word for it. Mine would be Eldrich. But not Eldrich in any obvious way. It didn't glow with an eerie light or have tentacles or make a normal mortal mind see in 18 dead languages. But a regular person, say someone like Bridger Hahn, would simply not see the case if they didn't have to. He had to see it, though. It was his job. An old wooden case, coated in dust, like it had been standing there longer than anything else in the annex, which, for the record, it had. The route's light buzzed and flickered when he lifted the first tub to case the mail. His very own route. Route 413. Wasn't 13 an unlucky number? According to Meadow, 4 was unlucky because it meant death in Mandarin. His little sister collected superstitions like a magpie. Bridger didn't care. He had a regular route now. He felt almost happy, which was a new experience for him. He found a route book, ancient, thin, and mostly handwritten in intelligible scrawl, as if some madman had penned it. Everything Bridger expected from his co-workers in Atlantic City. He flipped through the sparse instructions, then stuffed it into his satchel. The street names swam in his brain. Highway 666 was also unlucky, and he hadn't thought that was in New Jersey. Moriai Street. He didn't know that one. Then he fell into an unthinking rhythm of sorting the mail as the bit of gelatin in the bone cage of his skull blocked out all the things that would hurt his sanity. As he finished, Krajewski arrived with the DPS. Sir? Oh, it stands for Delivery Point Sequence, and it's the flats and letters that are already put into order by the human machines. And before you ask, a flat is a large piece of mail like those floppy books. Magazines, sir. Yeah. Anyway, Krajewski arrived with the DPS and said tonelessly, "Congratulations, those are for you." "Thanks," Bridger said, confused. Then realized the supervisor meant the jacket piled on top. "Oh, a new coat!" "And overshoes." Krajewski wasn't looking at Bridger. He wasn't looking at anything. Bridger nodded. Krajewski stared, without blinking. Was this some sort of joke Bridger was missing? Maybe Krajewski was high. Maybe he was waiting for Bridger to try on the coat. So Bridger, out of polite awkwardness, shook out the coat and tried it on. Nice coat, the kind with a lining that came out on warmer days and a slick waterproof shell. It fit him perfectly, and we loved to see it. Awful nice of the guys to do this for me. Awfully strange. Atlantic City's annex was not known for its high morale. He zipped up the coat. "Oh, you guys even had my name embroidered." Krajewski leaned nearer with a lurch, as if he misjudged the speed and tilt of his own body. He stared at the name. "Yes, Bridger Hahn. We did." Was Krajewski making this weird? Was it Bridger? Wasn't weird at all. Maybe he and his supervisor were having some kind of non-verbal bonding moment. Maybe this was an American thing that Bridger somehow missed. Someone spent a nice chunk of their uniform budget on... He put his hand into the pocket. Dog treats? Bridger chuckled, uncomfortable with the contraband. That's funny. "They're a very important tool for your route," Krajewski said with absolute seriousness. "Dog treats are against regulation." Bridger narrowed his eyes. "Put them in your satchel." But in the satchel! And because his boss was telling him, Bridger obeyed. Krajewski pointed at the bundle on top. There are also overshoes and pants. Bridger noticed them. Oh, great. He'd never worn overshoes or weatherproof trousers. This was New Jersey, after all, not Montana. But he wasn't going to be ungrateful to his supervisor. I'll be sure to wear them when the weather gets... Put them on now. Bridger instinctively obeyed and picked up the trousers, a thick denimish material that would be heavy but warm. Then he stopped. Krajewski stood staring at the place Bridger had just been standing. I'm sorry, you want me to take off my pants right here? Krajewski tilted his head slightly, jerky and unnatural. When his monotone inflected upward, Bridger thought he heard a crackling behind his voice. Yes? Bridger glanced over to the manager in the accountables cage, an old man who spent most of his day watching YouTube videos of paternity court. This was definitely weird. I'm not gonna do that, boss. Krajewski blinked, too slowly. That was a joke. Ha. Now, Krajewski was an anxious, stringy man, but Bridger had heard him laugh and make normal jokes. But then again, Bridger made people serious. One of his high school girlfriends had written poetry about him being haunted and mysterious. She had promptly dumped him as soon as she realized he was actually depressed and awkward. Maybe he had ruined Krajewski's timing. They cover all, Krajewski said. Oh, coveralls. In the catalog, coveralls looked much more lightweight. As he shook out the clothing, they changed from dense, weather-resistant trousers to a lightweight protective bib. Now, I don't want you to think that Bridger is in any way unobservant. You and I know that some very oblivious entity possessed what's-his-name Krajewski. You and I know that the standard issue protective and adaptive wear he'd been given literally changed to meet his expectations. But remember, Bridger is a human, and humans are stupid. Bridger's awareness could not wrap around the idea, so his brain tricked him into misremembering the previous weight and texture. It's a very common defensive... Oh, of course! Abby, that's what we're here for. This must be part of that new series. Sir, do you mean the PSA about the fragility of the human mind? Or do you mean the one about the expansion of the universal... Yes, that's the one. Dear audience, I'm sure as we continue to watch Bridger Hahn, we will see how the human defensive mechanism is worn down into madness. Oh, it's a real shame. I kind of like this guy. Hiya, I'm LJ.
And I'm Lane McLeod Jackson.
You're a troll.
What? I thought it was funny.
We're here to let you know you can also find us on Substack under
Paperback Productions.
Yep, this podcast and other goodies will be delivered right to your inbox if you subscribe.
So please support us.
Emotionally.
Financially.
Dramatically. See, I can be funny too.
Try to be professional, okay, babe? Thank you all for your support.